Congressman Bost, thank you so much for being here with us today.
Thanks for having me on.
So if elected, this will be your 5th term
Correct.
in Congress. Why do you want the people of Southern Illinois to send you back there?
Well, there's several things that we're still working on. Right now, we need to change the economy. The economy is, the inflation rate is 8.3%. That's taking about 1 month's salary away from people right now. 2 years ago, we didn't have that. Those things need to be corrected. Gas prices need to be corrected. We need to correct the problem at the border. The issues of dealing with foreign affairs is still out there. What's going on in Russia? All of these things I think we can touch on. But also the most important thing as well is I am now the ranking member of the VA committee. If the Republicans take the majority, I'll be chairman of the VA committee. From that position, we've been doing a lot of things for veterans. We passed a lot of good bills for veterans, but we need to make sure that people understand this, that Congress is not only there to pass law, but they also have to control the purse and as well make oversight. So once you pass the law, you make sure what you originally passed it to do, it's going to do. Whether that's the Mission Act, which is providing for the veteran that maybe can't make it to the VA because they're too far away or they can't get in because of a delay, then we need to make sure that it's doing what it's supposed to do, which you can go out in the private sector, receive those benefits. Also, as we move forward, we also passed the toxic exposure bill. Now, that bill, the PACT Act, basically, and I say toxic exposure, not burn pit. Burn pits are included, but it's for those veterans post 9/11 up until the time we left Iraq or Afghanistan. From the time we left Afghanistan, those that have been in country, we will assume that they have been exposed for medical care. Then they can still apply for any disability benefits that they think they might be justified, and based on science they can receive those. But they can at least receive the medical care through the PACT Act. Vitally important. But it's also vitally important that the VA puts it in place correctly. So as we move forward, there's a lot of issues out there that we're still needing to deal with.
And definitely want to kind of jump into some of those
okay,
issues here.
Fantastic.
But first and foremost, what do you feel like is your responsibility to your constituents, and would you say that you've been accessible to them?
Sure. I would say, yes, I have been. We try to, and understand this, the new district has changed around tremendously. In my old district, our main office was in O'Fallon. Our main office, because I only have part of St. Clair County, and it's not centrally located in the district, we'll have to move that, but yet we'll still have satellite offices. So we'll have an office in Carbondale like we do already. It covers the southern end. The new district is 34 counties. It's 1/3 of the state of Illinois. So providing that constituent service is vitally important. I've always been known to do that, and I can do it by having the main offices, but also having satellite offices and having the multiple area of staffing that we need for each individual issue. Whether it's your Social Security issue, whether it's a veterans issue, having a staffer assigned to each one of those that can focus on what needs to be done, and then looking at the bigger perspective of what my constituents are saying on how I need to be voting in DC.
One of the big issues, of course, is Roe v. Wade, and
you bet.
Lauded the Supreme Court decision to overturn it.
Yep.
A lot of people also seeking abortion services now, even from other states in
Right.
Southern Illinois.
Right.
Would you be working to prevent that?
No, and here's why. Seeking to prevent, no, that's a state issue. And let me tell you, I agree with the decision that was made out of the Supreme Court, and that is that it is a state issue. Now, I live in a state, I'm pro-life. Let me be very, very, very clear on that. I am pro-life. Always have been, never been an argument about that. But the state has the issue. Now the real question is what's the extreme situation? The state of Illinois has the ability in their law to late-term abortions, not only late-term abortions that taxpayers pay for. So we're going to pay for your abortion if you come to Illinois. I don't think that most of the taxpayers know that or understand that. Now the concern is, since it is up to the states, many of the states around us do not have abortion services. So now all of a sudden we're going to be paying for those that come from out of state into the state. Look, you can argue about the abortion issue. My constituents need to know I'm pro-life. I've always been pro-life, and I will continue to be pro-life. Now it's in the state's hands, and the states can make those decisions. Your state legislature is who you need to talk to about it.
For you personally, though, do you think there should be exceptions, whether it's for rape or incest?
Look, I never want to be in a situation. I have a daughter. I have 2 daughters, my wife. I have 7 granddaughters. I hope that they're never in that position. But as for me and my wife, when we've discussed it, we believe that each life is vitally important.
If there were to be some federal legislation, though, if the Democrats do try to
Well,
codify Roe v. Wade, would you vote that down?
I would always vote pro-life, period. Okay? So, and it doesn't matter. I'm going to vote the pro-life stance. Let me tell you what I am fighting against. Right now, the VA is decided to do abortions in the VA, even though there was a law in 1992 that banned it. Right now, that is a very, very big issue, not only in Congress, but the fact that the VA has made a choice to go against law by administrative rule, a very clear administrative rule. Now, they're using a side rule that was passed that had nothing to do with abortion to claim that that's the reason they can do it. They're doing them right now. As a member of the VA committee, as the ranking member, as the chairman of the VA committee, we will do oversight because we don't believe that they have that power. Right now, that will be argued out in the courts, I believe. There have been several lawsuits that are moving towards that. I think it's terrible because it violates what has been a long time standing, and that's the Hyde Amendment, which actually says no taxpayer dollars can be used for abortion except rape, incest, and life of the mother. They brought up rape, incest. Their rule says rape, incest, life, and health of the mother. That health makes it to where that can be a pretty broad spectrum.
You spoke with your opponent, also a veteran. You guys are both veterans there. He actually said that he doesn't think you have veterans' interests in mind, their best interests. I'm sure you take umbrage with that. So
I do.
What is your response?
And here's why. I have worked very, very hard for my veterans, not only as my position in Congress, okay, but also in my 20 years as a state legislator. Now, how can he say that I don't have veterans' best interest in mind when I carried the bill that actually sped up the process by which they can use their appeals, bringing it down from what was 7 to 10 years, many of them dying for those appeals. And the bill that I carried brings it back down to anywhere from 18 months to 2 years. How can he say I don't have veterans' interest at heart whenever I was right there working to make sure that we pass the PACT Act, which provides for those veterans who have been exposed to toxic exposure? How can an opponent say anything like that when my own colleagues voted me in to be the spokesperson for the Republican Party for veterans? That's about the largest stretch I've ever heard.
You mentioned the economy, of course, very top of mind for so many people. What do you think needs to happen in this next term to combat that for people, and why vote against the Inflation Reduction Act?
Okay, very clear. First, the Inflation Reduction Act, even if you talk to experts in the economy, did not and will not stop the growth of inflation. Now let's look at inflation. Inflation is at 8.3%. Now if you put that in perspective, how many of your listeners can take 1 month of their salary and throw it away? Because that's what 8.3 to 8.5% interest in or inflation happens. Your buying power is reduced by 1/12. 1/12 of what you could buy before, you now can't buy. How sad is that? And that's because over the last 2 years, under the current administration, we've had some very, very bad policies. One was the final, what they claimed was a COVID bill, which was very bad policies. All economic people said, even Democrat, former Obama economic experts said, you're taking too many dollars, chasing too few of items. It's going to cause a massive inflation. We're seeing massive inflation. You tie that with the fact that you shut down the Keystone XL pipeline, you shut down a lot of our opportunity to be energy efficient, fuel prices go up on top of the fact the inflation is already going up. You tie all of that together, what you've got is you've got an administration that was elected not based on policy, but based on personalities.
So if the Republicans get the majority, what would you do? What would you
Good,
seek
I'm
to
glad
do
you
to
asked.
lower that for
I'm
Americans?
glad you asked. One of the bills that we're already proposing is to reinstate the Keystone XL pipeline for faster moving of product. We're also making sure that the permitting process is put in place so that we can access to those areas where this administration now has denied our own United States oil companies to tap into to keep us at a competitive market. Not only that, but to be energy independent. The other item, when the president, I've got the bill that's out there that does this, when the president makes a decision to tap the reserves, the Secretary of Energy must allow the opening up of all areas that were opened before to tap the reserves if that time to tap our new oil, okay, if the time that the president does it, it is not in case of an emergency. You see, we weren't in the case of emergency when he took our reserves down to the point he has at this time. Remember why our reserves exist. Our reserves exist for the safety of this nation in case of emergency. If we're attacked from another nation, if we have multiple storms, multiple damage around the United States, that's the reason you tap the oil reserves. You don't tap it for a political ploy to try to bring fuel rates down because they're climbing because of your bad policy. So there's several things we're going to be doing as soon as we take the majority.
Turning to sort of election integrity issues.
You bet.
You voted not to certify the 2020 presidential
You doggone
election.
right I did not.
Can you say now that President Biden was duly elected?
I didn't say he wasn't. I've never said he's not duly elected. My job was not to decide whether he was duly elected. My job in the Constitution, when you study it, and that's what the 128 of us that voted in opposition to those two states was, the procedure is pretty simple. It is a case where we as members must either certify that they did it according to the Constitution, they held their elections according to the Constitution, or they did not. Let me tell you the two states, and the only way we can not certify in the House to vote, not certify, the senator from, one of the senators from that state must file the motion. There was 5 states that could have been made the motion on. Only 2 were. And those 2, the reason being is the Constitution is very clear. Your elections are monitored, controlled by the state legislature, and only the state legislature. Those 2 states, and it doesn't say unless there's a pandemic, those 2 states had modifications in their election laws on the timing and the way that the votes were collected. One was used and done incorrectly because the governor made the decision without the state legislature. The other, there was an executive board made a decision without the state legislature.
Do you think those modifications could have changed the outcome?
No, not with just 2. Had there been 5, that may have. But let me tell you that this is not about that. It's about my job as the Illinois 12th elected official. I know the Constitution. We studied it in great detail. That decision did not come easy, but it did come very clearly under the Constitution of what we had to do. I had a reporter ask me, how could you do that and after what happened on that day? And here was my answer. I took an oath to the Constitution, and I will make the vote based on the Constitution, not based on my emotions of the day.
And much has been said about that day. You were there. People have called it an insurgency. Others have said it's less nefarious. Where do you sort of...
Well, let me tell you that where I was at, that was all on the other side of the building. Let me tell you this. Everyone has the right to protest in this nation. It's in the Constitution. You have the right of free speech. But free speech does not include damaging property or hurting others, okay? Now, I do believe that full investigations are being done and should be done to find out what really happened. Who were the people? Were they from the right? Were they from the left? Were they some people just there causing trouble? What do we need to do? Unfortunately, the January 6th Commission, in 230 years, and I want to be very, very clear on this, in 230 years, there's always been minority representation appointed by the minority on any commission or oversight committee. In this case, Kevin McCarthy recommended his members to the commission, to that oversight committee. Nancy Pelosi refused those members and appointed the 2 that she chose based on political purposes. It is a political dog and pony show. That's all it is, and that's all it will ever be. Now, do I believe that we should really go into depth in yes, as oversight? Because that's our job? You doggone right. We should have a lot of investigations onto a lot of things that have happened. And January 6th, whenever I talk about it, we need to understand that everybody has their right to protest. Nobody has the right to damage property or hurt people.
Former President Trump has indicated if he were to be reelected, he would pardon at least some of those folks, maybe all of them. Would you support that or not be in favor of that?
It's not my job to support it. President Trump, if he has the right, if he's the duly elected president, to pardon whoever he wants. And I have disagreed with him on pardons before, Rod Blagojevich being the best example of that. You know, one of the only things that President Trump and I disagreed on was letting Rod Blagojevich out of jail and or pardoning him. He did not pardon him, but he did let him out of jail. And I hope that that was because I argued my point on why he should not be pardoned.
If we see the former president's name on a ticket, Republican primary, would you support him or some other candidate?
Let me tell you this. Right now, my focus is on this election cycle. I don't know how the primary is going to turn out, but in 2024. Whatever Republican is elected and slated in 2024, you can pretty well guess I'm going to be supporting them. But who all is on that ballot, how that's going to plan out, right now my main job is I'm asking the people of the Illinois 12 to send me back to do the job they've sent me to do before, so that I can serve them, and when it's all said and done, I can lay my head down tonight and know I do it the best I can.
When is the last time you think you've spoken with the former president? Do you guys
I spoke with him on the Friday before the primary election on Tuesday when he called to endorse my candidacy. And we talked at that time.
And certainly his influence with a colleague of yours in the Mary Miller Davis election may have had some influence.
It may have.
Do you think he still has a really strong hold on the Republican Party?
There are
in Southern
some.
Illinois?
There are some he does. He won very strongly what is now my new district. He ran very strongly what was my old district. And he has that influence around the nation. Now the question, I really don't know if he's going to run. He doesn't tell me that, nor does, when he tweets at night, does he call me and say, is that okay?
If he does tell you, will you let us know?
I will.
All right. And some have called, given the investigations into Mar-a-Lago and sort of the former president, do you think that these calls for defunding the FBI are appropriate? Do you agree or disagree?
Let's not talk about defunding. How about let's talk about truly giving the oversight that Congress needs to do. If this administration or any other administration has started to use any agency, whether it's the IRS, which they know they used in one administration, okay, that's been proven, whether it's the Department of Justice, the FBI, or any other agency as a tool or a weapon against another party, we must have the investigation to make sure that that does not occur. These agencies need to not have a political party bias. They need to have a constitutional bias. We need to make sure with our oversight, which I believe we will do, not my committee, because that's not my committee of jurisdiction, but the committees of jurisdiction will probably investigate what exactly and why a former president's residence was broken into with things that we've never seen before.
You think it was broken into?
Well, it was, okay. A warrant was issued. Why was the warrant issued? Without redaction, and if they want to keep that under wraps and only the committee can read it, then they need to do that. So that then we can say, yes, this was legitimate, or there was a problem. That's our job, to have oversight. Our agencies don't work against the people. They work for the people. We need to make sure they continue to do that.
This week, a lot of people talking about Kanye West and both his remarks on Tucker Carlson as well as on social media. The Attorney General of Missouri tweeted something last night, then deleted it in support of Kanye West. Are you concerned at all about any hateful rhetoric that we're seeing? Do you think that there's a sort of growing white supremacy or even anti-Semitism in our region?
There's hateful on both sides, unfortunately, quite often because of running amok social media. That doesn't mean we can put that genie back in the box. I'm not one to ban social media, okay? I do believe that social media has got to the point they're a monopoly, and they may need to fall under the rules on interstate commerce to try to, make sure there's fair play in social media. But the hate and discontent that is occurring because of the constant barrage of news, whether 24-hour news networks or our phones and social media, and then the anger that builds up on both sides, which sells television shows, which sells podcasts, that's hard to get that calmed back down, unfortunately. I'm a person that knows that we've got to be wise in our words, how we talk to people. We also need to understand that we are a country of free speech, and we can't automatically, if you don't like a word I used, paint me with a broad brush that I'm whatever, okay? People make mistakes, and right now, sometimes people change what words you can and can't not use, and they don't write a book on that. And sometimes a word that you used yesterday, all of a sudden today, because somebody in social media says they're not the right word to use. I think we should calm that down and understand that it's just a communication, and we don't need to wear our feelings on our sleeves, and we need to start pulling together and understand we live in the greatest nation in the world. We should just start working together.
Just a couple more quick issues
No, we're
to
good.
touch on. You have spoken against the canceling of student debt.
Yep.
Why?
How's that fair to a person that paid their student debt? How's that fair to a parent that saved and saved and saved and paid for their child's college, and now all of a sudden we're canceling student debt? Is the professor that charged you that, are they going to now start working for free? I think that we ought to look at how higher education is handling this. And by canceling student debt, we've done nothing to discourage higher education from continuing to raise their tuition fees. We've only encouraged them to raise them even more. And the thing is, I've had on many of my town hall, teletown halls, meetings out in the public of students that I've actually would benefit from this going, I made that debt, it's kind of my responsibility, right? Look, if we want to do something to work to bring college tuition down, I'm all for it. We do it in the VA. We actually, the GI Bill, other things that we do in a sensible way to provide opportunities for those who want to seek higher education can do it. But to all of a sudden write off the debt, that only worsens the inflation as well. Because once again, that's all like pumping more dollars in that chasing more, less items again. And it won't help the inflation problem. And I'm not sure that you can justify doing that to the people who've actually paid for their college.
You also voted against capping the cost of insulin. Can you explain the rationale there?
Yeah, because not only was it the capping the cost of insulin, that was a part of a bigger bill. And that bigger bill actually shut down the research of about 375 drugs that we're out there doing on right now. If we want to bring down the price of insulin, we shouldn't cap the price. We should work to make sure that we free up the patent so that we can actually have more companies producing insulin to bring the cost down.
You mentioned already Russia.
Yeah.
Some people feeling just uneasy about what
We should feel
the
uneasy.
future is going. I mean, is it too much to say there could be a nuclear event in our lifetime, and what can
We pray
Congress
not.
do to prevent that?
We pray not. I think that falls under the administration more than the Congress itself. But let me tell you the concerns I have. One is there's nothing good that has come out of Russia attacking Ukraine. But one thing we've noticed is Russia's ground forces are not as tough as what we thought. However, their leader has his finger on a button. That should always be a concern. China should be a concern. China's reaction to how NATO, not the United States by itself, but how NATO reacts as far as what Russia is doing with Ukraine. Because how are we going to make sure that China doesn't make that step over Taiwan even though they're threatening? And then how do we keep Korea off from going off the deep end there? These are all, and that's not counting Iraq and their problems. All of these are issues that are out there that we have to keep an eye on. We have to watch the buildup of military forces in each one of those nations and then what they're doing. We also need a very clear message out of the administration that where we are at is that we do not want you to step down that line, and understand that we need an administration that sends a clear message. And I think sometimes our message has been confused over the last 2 years with the worst pullout of any war that we've ever seen when we pulled out of Afghanistan, and we've lost 13 more military personnel, which whenever I said this, and I said it and I mean it to this day, any private, any enlisted person that's been in for just a short period of time that has played a game of risk knew that that was one of the worst withdrawals you've ever seen. Bad choices for the future of us. It's in a clear message. To stop the possibility of Putin going too far should have been done back then. Now we have to deal with it going forward. I believe that we need to help Ukraine where we can to a point, and we need to make sure that, and right now Ukraine is holding their ground against Russia. The threat and the rattling, I hope that Putin is wise enough not to press that button. If he is and does, I'm worried about it. And it doesn't matter whether you're Republican or Democrat, you're worried about that.
I hate to end on such a despondent note there, but is there anything else that you would like to say to
On
the
a,
voters?
yes, on a more positive
Mm-hmm.
note than that. Look, it's been a great honor of serving as congressman for the Illinois 12th District. The new Illinois 12th District, I'm looking forward to serving them there as well. I appreciate all my supporters over the years. Look, I'm a truck driver's son. I've been blessed beyond measure with my wife and my children, and to be raised in this nation, to serve in the United States Marine Corps, to be a public servant as a firefighter, and now to serve as a member of Congress in the greatest nation in the world. We got our problems, but remember, we're still the greatest nation.
And asking folks to come out and vote. November
Vote
8th.
early. Vote early, but don't vote often, one time.
Congressman, thank you very much for your time today. Really appreciate it.
All right, thank you.